What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. Just super excited, as always, to have a new guest on and talk about something a little bit different. I feel like we've this spring so far beat redfish and trout over the head pretty hard, which there's so much to learn and so much to take in and kind of break down and analyze about these fish, redfish and speckled trout. But we're gonna talk about some other stuff that can be pretty tricky, and having a little upper edge, a little extra information can really be helpful. So we're going to talk about the main focus. I think is probably we're going to see where this podcast takes us, but we're really going to focus on sheepshead first. Probably talk a little bit about flounder, black drum, and redfish as well. But sheepshead, I think, is going to be a main focus. Really cool fish, delicious fish, and a very tricky fish to hook. Not necessarily tough to know where they are, but tough to fish well for them and hook the fish when you get bites. So I'm excited about that. Before we get started, though, I wanted to remind you all about our Patreon account that we've started. If you do really love this podcast, no pressure, but if you do really love it and you want to help support us financially, you can do $5 and $10 donations a month. I'm doing a lot of giveaways through Patreon, as well as some exclusive content coming y'all's way for the Patreon listeners. And that just helps me for the time that I've invested into this and the money that I've got tied up in it. And so it's super, it blesses us in a big way if y'all are able to support us. But no pressure if you just enjoy the content and can't do that. We still want you here. We still want you listening and enjoying this great knowledge from all these different captains and anglers that we're kind of bringing together here on Eastern Current. And check out our private Facebook group, Eastern Current Fishing, for all the listeners. Just ask to join and we'll let you in. And it's just a great way to connect with other listeners and other anglers along the East Coast, and hopefully help y'all out on the water and maybe make some new fishing buddies. But that's enough of me rambling. We're going to bring on our guest. What's going on, Luke?
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Just excited to have you on here. I've just been very impressed with all the fish you've been catching lately. Black drum, bonita, speckled trout, gray trout. I mean, that spring we were talking about it beforehand. The spring fishing's been awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm a big fan of the spring mix this time of year, man. I mean, you've got everything really. Obviously the red drum has been going on all winter. Speckled trout as well. They start to heat up more, but especially the black drum, the sheepshead, bonita, like you said, all those things kind of come into play. It just gives you so much of a different variety of things to fish for. Especially with the numbers of black drum we've had this year, man. I mean, the fishing's just really, really been off to a great start, and especially as early. I mean, normally I don't start catching these fish till into April, and it's just really, really been productive so far this year.
Yeah, that's I'm seeing that in a lot of things. Like I talked to my buddy who was turkey hunting in South Carolina the other day and had been scouting up here, and he's like, man, a lot of these hens seem like they're already bred up. And then my buddy up in Weldon texted me yesterday. They had 100 fish on 100 striped bass on the jig in Weldon yesterday. It just seems like we've got some warm weather. It seems like these fish are kind of a little early, or the fishing's good a little early. I mean, I have not had a year of spring albacore fishing like I've had this year. Usually it's like 2 or 3 days of albies and they're gone in the spring, but it's been pretty consistent, and the bonita's been good, man. Have you had the bonita? Yep. I mean, can you remember the bonita fishing being this good the past couple of years?
No, not in this area. It's funny, man. Every year it seems like, I don't know if you're the same way, but every single year come March, I'm like, man, it's going to be early this year. It's going to be early. It's warming up, and then this year it really has been. And no, I mean, normally this is probably my best year on bonita. I mean, in my experience, I'm fishing for them for 2 or 3 days and they're gone. Yeah. At least around Wrightsville and Carolina, and then the guys up at Topsail, those guys are usually hammering them right on a little bit better. But this year, I mean, it's been hot and heavy down here, and they're still here, in good numbers. I mean, I had some buddies out today, and they hammered them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I keep expecting for them to not be here, and it's like just long pushes of them. And the same thing with the albies. Like I'll bump into them a few times, in the spring, and usually not in close. Usually at like 8 or 10 miles. Right. Trying to get away from the crowds bonita fishing, and you'll see the albacore, and they've been from freaking 3 miles to 12 miles. Like, I mean, anytime I get outside 3 miles, it's like I'm seeing albacore.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I've seen them up north. I mean, right on the beach. I mean, just outside of pier. Pier casting to them. They've been everywhere. It's been awesome.
It has been cool.
I don't fish for them that much. I mean, for no other reason. Just usually I want something I can eat.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're super. I mean, they've been everywhere. I mean, you can't drive by them and not cast at them.
No, they just rip drag.
I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm with you though too. I mean, I do like when my clients like catching fish that they don't want to eat, because then I don't have to clean them. But I'm with you. Like if there's a bonita and an albacore right there, and I can cast and catch either one, I'm probably going to throw to the bonita.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
But yeah, it's been cool, man. It's some good gray trout. You've been catching some good gray trout this spring. I've been seeing a lot of posts of some gray trout.
Grays and speckled trout, man. I mean, it's been good. I mean, the gray trout have been definitely more of a bycatch.
Yeah.
Have
you been catching those mixed in with the specks, or catching them jigging for gray trout?
Yeah, they've been mixed in. I haven't jigged for them yet. I know they're there.
Yeah.
I just haven't tried.
Gotcha.
I haven't had a reason to yet.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we're getting into that right time of year, and I know people have already been catching them, but you do so well. Like scrolling through your Instagram the other day, I was looking at, past this last summer and just past catches that you've done, really focusing on sheepshead. And I think that's a great fish for people. One, for clients, like I was talking about earlier, they're tough to hook. I mean, you get the bites from them. A lot of times you don't even know they're eating. They're tough to hook, but they're great fish to go out and target. They're plentiful. They pull hard. They require a little bit of work, but it's not hard to get the bites. It's just hard to kind of understand when to set the hook. I think it's a really good fish to kind of share with people, and kind of share tactics and talk about, and hopefully get some guys on the boat with you, get some trips booked. But let's talk a little bit about the sheepshead fishing. I'm just rambling about sheepshead fishing here, but let's talk about kind of the spring fishing transitioning into summer.
Sure, and I mean, so that's the deal with it, man. I mean, they're extremely plentiful. I mean, there's just a lot of them around here. It's a fish that not that many people, target. And you're talking about the hard bite and everything. With charters, I do sometimes struggle with that. Some people do want to go try.
Yeah.
And it's fun, once you get them going and they figure out, what the bite is and everything, and they kind of can capitalize on it. That's when it's cool. It's not like sitting there drum fishing, casting. Those people are, tight, tense, ready to set the hook, at any moment. So that part of it's cool, for sure. But I mean, as far as a spring, man, I mean, it's here. I mean, there's sheepshead around. I mean, there's plenty of people catching them. I haven't been really yet, just because I've been the black drum, like you said. I know we'll probably talk about that later. But for the most part, the sheepshead really. They go to, Florida, I guess, has always been known as like the sheepshead capital, but, the sheepshead stay here through the wintertime, or just off the beach. They don't, not all of them leave.
Yeah.
You can catch them pretty consistently if you put in the effort for them, through the winter months. But I mean, they're kind of like trout, really. As far as they start biting early, and I mean, it really can't be, the water temperature. I'm looking for like 50, 55, 60 is when they really start getting active. And, that's what we've been at for a while now. But this is just kind of a little thing I've figured out. But when the pinfish are inshore, there's sheepshead here.
Yeah.
And there's pinfish here now.
Yeah, they are, unfortunately.
So, yeah, I know. But, yeah, man, I mean, I'll look at the water temperature for sure. Once it gets consistently 55, 60 degrees, I'm going to start targeting them, a little bit more. It's definitely early in the spring, I like to be on structure a little bit closer to the inlets, just because that does seem to be like where they'll congregate a little bit more. But that's not always the case. You do get some that I think are residential fish that, get back in the mud and the shallows, kind of like, drum and sheepshead do. Or excuse me, trout do, to stay warm. But for the most part, going into the spring of the year, man, I'm staying close to the inlets if I can help it. Bridges, docks, the jetties, any kind of hard structure like that.
Do you do much ocean fishing for them or no?
I really don't. For no other reason than if I'm out there, I'm usually, trying to flounder fish. And usually the sea bass are so bad.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why. Once I start getting a bunch of trash fish like that, messing with the bait stuff, I don't really do it so much. Yeah, I mean, now's the time, man. I mean, they in the past, the water temperature's right there where it's at. I know they're here. Typically, if I can help it, I really like to fish around bridges for them.
Yeah.
That's just me. Anytime there's bridges, there's docks around it. It's just good, hard structure that's been there for years. That's something I always kind of look for going into sheepshead fishing is, old growth.
Yeah.
Lots of old barnacles, vegetation, whatever, sea urchins, whatever it may be. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to capitalize on bridges or, some of the older docks that I know of. But fishing around bridges is easy. You can get in there, you can tie off to the bridge, or use your trolling motor or whatever. The main thing is being able to fish straight up and down.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you figured that out.
Yeah.
At some point or another. But for the most part, man, and I really like to use, fiddler crabs, sea urchins, anything like that. A lot of people use barnacles for them. It kind of turns into a mess for me. So I stick with, with the fiddler crabs. But what typically, man, you find these bridges. A good thing I've kind of found out to do, and I don't know if you've ever tried this, and a lot of people may not know, but if you get it to lower tides, sometimes you just go right around. I'll go right around and look at these structures, look at these docks, look at these bridges, and you can see where the sheepshead have been feeding on the pylons. If you go up to them, you see a bunch of places where there's white plot, spots all over the pylons. That's sheepshead. Barnacles don't just fall off.
Right.
Like that, and that's a good thing to do, to really help you figure out where there's good numbers of sheepshead.
Yeah.
That's not a few fish that do that.
Definitely.
But
it's crazy, man. Those that they eat barnacles. I mean, they're those gnarly teeth, and they're sticking their face up and chewing the barnacles right off the side of a piling. It's impressive. That's cool, though, man. Just scouting in that way and looking for areas that the fish are on. That's really cool. Have you ever heard of anybody using side scan to locate sheepshead? That's just a thought that popped in my head.
It would work.
Yeah,
it would 100% work. Especially on a bridge. I have done it with my GoPro before.
Oh, really?
Stick that thing down in the water, and you can see them. But a side scan would definitely work.
Yeah.
And I've just never tried it.
So
but that would definitely save you the trouble of looking for them.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you like to fish fiddler crabs a lot. Is there a special way you like to rig them? Because there's people are coming out with bottom super jigs. Ice Strike's got some sheepshead jigs, and some people fish Carolina rigs. Some people will fish just a jig head. How do you like to rig your? Let's talk about the fiddler crabs and then also sea urchin, because I've never fished with sea urchin for them or barnacles. So
Sure.
I'd like to know how you like to do that.
Sure. I use some of the other like jig head rigs and everything. And I like them. I'm kind of old school Carolina rig, and it's like hard to teach old dog new tricks, I guess, if you will, but they do work. And the thing that is great about them is, you don't have your main line, your egg weight, your swivel, then, your 12 foot or, 12 inches a leader or whatever, that's a lot of gap, to miss these fish. So that's why I do like them. You don't have that slack in your line. But I don't fish them very much, for no other than my own preference. But I do like them. And as far as, rigging fiddler crabs, I would do it the same way on those as I would a Carolina rig or anything. I typically, take the crab and stick the hook directly in the legs, like in the side of them. I do not expose it. I just
you don't expose it?
Nope, I don't. I just push the hook directly into them. And by doing that, when you've got your line in the water, that crab's, kind of sitting straight up in the air, or in the water, if that makes sense. And, those fish come up and grab it versus if you pull it all the way through, the crabs, a lot of times it kills them, it'll break them. They can just kind of come up and just barely take a bite out of it. And, you can miss that fish by that. So I don't like to expose the hook. I just stick it directly into them, and don't pull it all the way through. And I've found that that's really, I don't know if it's the way it, presents itself in the water or what.
Yeah.
But I've seen you get a better hook set and more bites by doing that.
That's cool. I've never even thought about that.
Yep. And, I've kind of started figuring it out. For the main reason I started doing it is it doesn't tear the crabs all to pieces. They don't break or whatever. You don't have two holes. You don't have an entrance hole and an exit hole. That's just more places you tear your crab up. They break the shell, whatever. They can just barely come up and just take a chunk, and it's gone.
Yeah.
But I'm a Carolina rig guy. That's really what I like to do. For the most part. sometimes I do like those jigs. If I'm fishing, boat docks or things like that, I do like the jigs, just because it is hard to get straight up and down. I'm not tying off to somebody's boat dock. So, you can kind of feel the bite a little better with those, and that is something I do like.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting. So, sea urchins, do you fish sea urchins much? You were talking about them? Or
I do, yeah, if I can get them. So it's typically a low tide thing.
Yeah.
They're usually in the lower part of the column. So, I got to go out at low tide to get them, which is, no big deal. But yeah, I'll go around the pilings, bridge piling, dock pilings, usually bridges, big pilings seem to hold them more. And I'll just pull it to a trolling motor and scoop them off with the net.
Yeah.
But then from there, obviously I don't have one to show you, but, I just take my pliers and, break the spines off of them, until you get down to, the urchin itself. And then you just take the pliers and, just break it. And then on the inside of it, there's, one big, it looks like a big white barnacle. I mean, it's really, really big. And that's what I use. And same deal, I don't expose the hook. I just stick it through it, at the bottom of it. And, they don't last long. If they're there, the sheepshead are going to eat them.
Yeah.
So I'll get, 10 or 20 of them, they'll be gone pretty quick. But same deal. Now on those, I have tried to use those on the jigs, and they do not seem to work as good for some reason. I don't know if it's just big and bulky or it just looks weird on the jig to them. But if I'm using those, I'm fishing a Carolina rig, 100%.
Yeah. Now, are you usually fishing a circle hook on a Carolina rig, or are you fishing a J hook when you're sheepshead fishing?
I don't fish a circle hook. I usually use a J or a Kale.
Okay, cool.
It kind of depends on what type of bait I'm using. If I'm using barnacles, like I was talking a little bit, I'm usually using a J hook. And they're just hard to use, I think, and that's the main thing that sheepshead are fishing on. So it's kind of match the hatch deal. But it just ends up being a little bit frustrating to me because you can't keep them on the hook. But there's a lot of different ways to do it. I haven't had a reason to yet. But normally I like a Kale hook personally.
Yeah.
And I'll use a big one. Big number 4. I mean, those sheepshead have a big mouth. But Kales or J's are fine. Either one. I really don't use circle hooks much at all for that, just because I'm setting the hook. That's kind of frowned upon, or doesn't really work as good setting the hook with a circle hook.
No, it's tough.
So that's why I use these Kale hooks for the most part. That's usually my go-to.
Gotcha. The crazy thing about the sheepshead here, and I've shared this before, I think on a podcast, but maybe not on a podcast. Maybe it was just with my buddy Cameron talking. But you catch them on the pilings, and you catch them on docks and on structure, and then I don't see them ever. Like sight fishing for redfish, I don't see it. Maybe I'll see one or two cruise off an oyster bar or something. But then you get a flood tide up into the Spartina grass, and they're freaking everywhere in the grass. They'll get up in the grass and eat all those periwinkle or the little snails on the grass.
Yep.
And you'll see them like sticking their heads out of the water and eating the little snails off the grass. And I'll tell you what, dude, they're very hard to catch in the grass. But it's just funny how much they'll move from that deep structure up into the grass.
Oh yeah.
They're people think of them as just deep water structure fish, but they're just moving to wherever those crustaceans are. They just love those crustaceans.
Sure. And you're talking deep water, man. I'd be honest with you, I don't sheepshead fish in over 10 foot of water. Very rarely.
Wow.
No, I'm shallow for them. I don't fish really that much different than I would for redfish or trout or flounder or anything else. I'm very rarely do I fish for any of that in over 10 foot of water. The sheepshead is the one occasion I might get a little bit deeper, but most of the time 7, 6, 5, somewhere in there is where they're at. You don't have to have that deep water, and I think that's a mistake of people usually make, is assuming they're in this deep water and they're not.
I guess people, and maybe my downfall sometimes is being nervous that if I get too shallow, they're not going to, and having to fish vertically, that maybe the fish aren't going to swim into the boat. But I guess if you're tied up there for a while, you're not making noise. They're not worried about someone under the boat in shallow water.
No, they're not. I mean, and I'm just curious. I know you were talking about catching them in the grass, and I know people have done that before. And I've seen videos and stuff of that, but when you get up close to them in the grass like that, are they skittish or not so much?
No, they're not skittish. They're
That's
super skittish.
how they are on the pilings, really.
That's how they're on the pilings. They're super skittish on the flats. Like if you see one in open water, really shallow, super smart, super skittish. But in the grass, just like a redfish and a black drum, when they're in the grass, like they're so preoccupied. And even like you make a little noise, they'll spook 15 feet and start tailing again. Um, so
Right.
I just need to figure out how to tie a fly that looks like a snail, and that
Yeah,
sticks up on a piece of grass.
I've tried. Yep, and I've tried to use those little snails before,
Uh-huh.
because I know they'll eat them, with not very much success.
Really?
And I don't know why. I don't know if they only want them when they're feeding in that particular area. Um, but I've heard of people using them, but that's just one thing I've never been very successful with,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But I know they feed on them. I mean, that's why they're there in that grass, is doing that.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, you'll hear
But,
them just coming up and sucking them off the grass. It's crazy. Have you
Yeah.
messed around with the mud crabs at all? The larger mud crabs for sheepshead?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I didn't, wasn't too specific on that. If I'm fishing at least in my area, around Wrightsville Beach,
Uh-huh.
Figure Eight, wherever. If I'm fishing that clear water like that, I mean, you know how it is around here. I'm usually going to use a fiddler crab, but if I get back more in the ICW, especially going down south, Cape Fear River, wherever may be something like that, I'm going to use mud crabs
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, in that clear water, they will bite them 100%. But I haven't had the success with them that I have, in some of the darker water.
Okay.
And just to give you an example, and I don't know if it's coincidence, but it's happened to me kind of before. But I had a charter a couple years ago. They booked me to sheepshead fish. I mean, they've done it with me before. That's what they wanted to do, and we went, and it was a husband and a wife, and me and the wife, we caught sheepshead all day, and her husband, he'd picked some mud crabs for me the day before. He fished the same 2 crabs all day and did not get a bite. And we
Really?
were right there in that clear water, and I think we caught like 15 or 20 sheepshead.
Golly, that's
It was
crazy.
just crazy.
That's good to know.
Yep.
That's
But
good to
when
know.
I get in dirty water, 100%. I mean, that's what I'm going to use.
Yeah.
It's a bigger bait, better presentation, I guess. Sometimes those fiddler crabs I think can be tough to see, I guess. But when you're in that clear water, they work great.
Yeah. Another point I wanted to talk about that you talked about earlier, just popped back in my head, was looking for those docks and the pilings or the bridges with the older and nastier the stuff, the more sheepshead you'd see on them. And I see that true with any fish. Like if I'm looking for docks to check for redfish or black drum or anything like that, it seems like those docks that are super, super covered up, old docks, pilings covered in barnacles, some grass hanging off of them. Is that what you see too? As far as the best, most
absolutely. I mean, I catch them on all of them, but definitely, I mean, the docks that have been through several hurricanes, they're old. Same deal. I mean, it's with any fish, and then I mean another thing, docks with lights.
Yeah.
Bridges with lights. I mean, it's the same thing. The sheepshead aren't that much different, really, than any of the other fish. They like those lights. I mean, you're still bringing shrimp in or little crabs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I've ridden around at night, looking for docks with lights for that very reason. Some of them hold fish, some of them don't. That's with anything. But lights, old structure. I mean, stuff that's just got a lot of growth on them. That's what's going to hold, your little baby fish or little shrimp. Just like anything else. Those sheepshead are going to feed just like the rest of them. They're looking, for any kind of vegetation. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of them, they eat, plant matter, all the barnacles, oysters, whatever. So the more that's there, you're going to have sheepshead for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You give them a bigger buffet, there's going to be more fish probably.
Yep.
Well, do you see much bycatch sheepshead fishing? And is there a way to kind of fish to maybe catch redfish and black drum while you're sheepshead fishing that you found, or is it more just bycatch?
And that's actually a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up for the reason. This time of year, coming into the spring, when I'm fishing around the bridges and stuff, still using fiddler crabs, it's a little bit early yet. The pinfish and stuff are, they're definitely in the waterway and stuff on some of the docks, but usually I can get away with sheepshead fishing for a couple of months before that happens, but for the most part, early, in the spring, it's just sheepshead and black drum. You got the occasional sea bass in there, or puffer fish, and I have caught some, togs before.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the bycatch is going to be, black drum or sea bass, and I will usually sheepshead fish around the bridges until I start getting eaten alive, by pinfish and sea bass and stuff like that, where I can't can't fish without setting the hook every 3 seconds for those guys, thinking it's a sheepshead. Um, and then that's when I'll kind of pull off of the bridges and get more into the waterway, some of that dirtier water where there's still a bunch of pinfish, but it goes back to where I was saying I have a hard time catching them on mud crabs.
Yeah.
Fishing around the bridges, I'll get back to those areas where I do fish mud crabs, and the pinfish don't mess with that. A sea bass still will, or a puffer, but it's got to be a big one.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I just like capitalizing on the bridges while I can, because it is, there's always fish on them. It's just a lot of structure. But most of the bycatch, is going to be black drum. I do catch a few reds, in the process, not so much at the bridge, but on the docks.
Yeah.
But 90% of it, is going to be black drum or sea bass, really.
Yeah.
And that's about the only bycatch I have with it.
Are you almost always? I'm just kind of firing questions as I'm thinking about them. Are you almost always tying up, or do you ever spot? Do you have spot lock on your trolling motor?
I do.
I feel like it messes them up. The sheepshead.
I don't like it. Yeah. I'm gonna tie off. Pretty much every time, unless if I'm dock fishing, I'll put my power poles down or whatever, and kind of pitch into it. But yeah, I'm gonna tie off. You can get away with using the trolling motor. I've done it, but I don't like it. It's too much going on. I'm trying to move, and I mean, if I can help it, I want to be right there. I mean, I want to fish straight up and down. So I'm usually going to tie off if I can help it, and that's the sketchy part of it. It's really helpful if you've got two people. A lot of times, what I do is actually set my anchor, way out in front of the structure, and then drift back with the current, and then put my anchor rope on whichever side where it's going to pull me off the piling, and then I'll tie off to it from there. So I've got my front line pulling me off, and then the back tied off. I'll get on either side of which way the wind and everything's blowing me. But it's going to happen. Your boat's going to bump. It's almost impossible not to. And I've made some rigs and stuff to keep you off of it, but that's the key to it. Unfortunately, you got to be in it. Yeah,
you got to be in it for sure. I've seen guys make like PVC stuff to cover their gunnels and maybe wrap life jackets or towels around the edge of the boat. And some of the the tough thing about some of those bridges is you get a lot of boat traffic, and so you got to be ready and keep your eyes peeled. Don't get banged against the pilings too hard. But yeah, that's cool. So when you're fishing, you were talking about. I want to pick your brain on this a little bit. You were talking about when you're fishing docks, dirtier water. And you can't tie right up, you can't fish vertically. What do you find the best way to still hook sheepshead? Like, do you feel like you can still catch them pretty well casting out to a dock?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I can. Just, I guess, from the experience of it, and anybody could. It would take you a little bit of practice, but anybody could do it. The best way is to learn on a bridge, but I'm always going to get on the up current side and pitch down into the current. It's keeping that pressure on it. I don't like the slack in the line if I can help it. Because you're constantly going to be kind of moving it a little bit, I guess, to try to keep it tight.
Right.
So anytime I'm going to do that, I'm going to get up current and pitch down current.
Okay.
For sure, if I can help it.
Yeah.
Unless it's just some kind of whatever crazy situation. But that's made it way easier for me.
Yeah, that seems to be the best play for, one, keeping your bait where you want it, two, keeping tension with the line, and three, when you hook a fish, fighting it. You lose so many rigs if you try to sit outside of the current, like off the end of the dock, and throw up underneath the dock, and the current's sweeping one way or the other. You're just sweeping into always setting up above.
And it makes it harder to get the fish out.
Yeah.
But it's more fun. I fish kind of heavy. For them, really for anything. My typical rod, is 7 foot, medium heavy, 50-pound braid, 30-pound leader, drag, lock it down.
Yeah, I like it.
Just in that structure. So it just, it's hard. It is harder. You're gonna get, you're gonna hook a big fish eventually that's gonna just bulldog you, because you are pitching down current. But
it's the only way to keep your bait where you want it, though.
Yeah, yeah. You do that pitching up current. By the time it hits the bottom, it's already slid out
exactly
a foot or so. And for a redfish and a big stinky piece of cut bait, that's fine. But those sheepshead aren't going to come off that piling, not far.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is really keeping it tight to the structure. In comparison to some other stuff, you don't have to. That's what those fish are feeding on. They're not cruising around looking. They're right there on the pilings eating.
For sure. for sure. So, what was my question here? When you're targeting, oh no, my other question was, you said 50-pound braid, 30-pound leader. What rod and reel? You said a 7-foot medium heavy, but what is there a brand of rod and reel that you prefer?
I'm 100% a Star Rod fan.
Star Rod fan. Nice.
Yeah, I love them. I mean, one, the warranty of them, and take that out of it. I just like the rod.
Yeah.
I really do. They've got a good variety.
It's clean looking too. It's good looking.
It is. I'll buy the pin combo, and the lifetime warranty works out great for me.
Yeah.
But I'll buy a pin combo. To start with a pin battle 2 or spin fish or whatever. And I'll use that till that rod breaks, and then I'll go put it on a Star rod.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, yeah. I mean, stars. I use HMGs and stuff, for trout or reds, whatever casting, stuff like that. My heavy flounder, sheepshead, whatever dock banging stuff or ocean. Yeah, I'm Star all the way. I love them.
Right on. Heck yeah.
I've
so
got
you said 7-foot medium heavy. You got 92 of them?
No, that's what it seems like. Yeah.
Close to it.
Yeah. Medium heavy. I mean, I usually fish, heavy duty for all of it. Just because I am fishing so much structure, and especially with clients,
Oh yeah.
they got the opportunity to get the fish out
For sure.
it's preference. But sheepshead have such a hard mouth. They've got all those teeth. I want something that when I set the hook, it's going to get through it.
Yeah.
I think that's a key thing. I've got some people I fish with, some buddies that bring their own stuff, and some of it's like trout fishing gear. And I mean, I know they've set the hook in sheepshead before, because I've seen it, and it turns out it wasn't enough to get through it, and that's why I like fishing that heavy duty stuff.
Yeah. So if you could, let's go through this one more time real quick. If you could lay out for somebody, like somebody's going to go try sheepshead fishing for the first time.
Yep.
What do they need to look for? I know you've already talked about it, but just real quick, like the key points of like where they need to stop to fish. Not your spots, but like say they're in Charleston, South Carolina, and they're just looking for the right structure.
Without a doubt, go to a bridge.
Okay.
That's the whole deal. The dock fishing is a little bit more advanced, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I don't normally start doing that till the pinfish show up bad. Go to a bridge. I mean, It's been known for years. There's going to be sheepshead on a bridge, 100%. And like I said, this is just in my area, and it does change. But I mean, really, I'm looking for 7, 8 foot of water or less.
Okay.
I mean, I'll fish all the way down to 2 foot, 1.5 foot. I mean, enough where you could, if they were swimming straight up and down, you could see them out of the water.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to spook them. But yeah, go to a bridge. Find the shallower section of it. There's just a difference. If you're in 20 foot of water, there's going to be a lot of current there.
Yeah.
So you're not keeping it there, and that's why I just like that shallow, areas. They're not that much different than the rest of the fish. But yeah, I mean, go to a bridge. The main thing that I like to try to do in this instance, I know I was talking about on the docks, that I like to fish up current, pitch and down current that way, so it keeps you tight. But if I'm on the bridge fishing straight up and down, I want to have my bait on the back side of the piling, from whichever way the current is. So, if the tide's rising this way, and the piling's here, I want my bait right on this side.
Yeah.
So you can keep it right there, not in the current. You're actually, tucked in tight right there. And, you're keeping your bait in the same area. You can feel them bite. I found on bridges sometimes when you're fishing up close like that, you will get hung up, because there is some other, people have fished it before. There's a lot of snags. But on that, I want to be on the back side of the piling from the current where I can keep it perfectly straight up and down. But, I mean, if I was going to go somewhere I'd never been before, had no idea there's a bridge or a dock, I'm going to go to the bridge, 100%.
Cool. That's good. And there's a bridge near everybody that gets on the water. So you got to bet there's sheepshead on every one of them. Well, cool. Well, let's transition to the other vertically striped inshore fish, which is the black drum, which seem to be pretty similar to sheepshead in ways, but you can definitely catch them. You don't have to be as up and down as often to catch black drum.
No. And it's funny. All these black drum I've been cleaning here lately, man. They've got the same thing in them that sheepshead do.
Really?
Barnacles.
Really?
They're full of them. Yep. And it's funny. You look at them, and I don't know how they eat them. Because they don't have teeth or anything. But yeah, barnacles. I mean, it's the same deal. But I don't. It's kind of funny. You talk about catching them as a bycatch. I do catch them on fiddler crabs, but I mean, really, to me, targeting black drum, I'm going to use shrimp.
Yeah.
If I can help it, fresh shrimp. I don't really use live shrimp just because it's expensive and you don't really need to.
Yeah.
Especially when the pinfish get here. But for the most part, when I'm actually going to target black drum, I do stay away from the bridges a little bit, and I get more into the docks or oysters. It's kind of 50-50. There's a lot of them that hold on to oysters, especially the farther south you go. It seems like, the oyster fishering's, better for black drum.
Yeah.
But docks, man, same deal. Docks to lights, old growth, just lots of junk on there, lots of snags. There's going to be black drum there. There might only be one or two, but more than likely there's fish there.
Yeah.
And the same deal, man. You can ride around and look. Played into that sheepshead thing like I was talking about earlier. Where I was saying I ride around and look at pilings that have been, gnawed on or anything.
Yeah.
If there's sheepshead activity there, there's black drum there.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I like to do. And I would not fish one, fish a certain dock because I didn't see that. Because it's not always the case. I mean, there may still be black drum there, but that's an easy way to start, especially if you had no idea where to go or anything like that. But typically for me on the black drum, if I'm going to try something, some new spot, they're aggressive. If I don't get a bite in 5 minutes, I'm gone.
Yeah,
I'm going somewhere else. And I think that's the same with everything else.
I think that's a problem a lot of people make is camping on a spot too long. Like just because you've caught fish there before. And sometimes it's tidal. Like sometimes all right, I'm here too early. I need to wait 30 minutes and it's going to be game on. But a lot of times it's, if you're sitting on a spot and you think that it's the same tide that you've caught fish on there before and you're not bid in 5 or 10 minutes with redfish or black drum. Maybe sheepshead is a little different. Sometimes I sit somewhere for a while.
I'll stay for sheepshead for a while. I really will. I mean, there's sometimes I've said, and I'm actually glad you brought it back up. I was just going to run this by you. I will stay for sheepshead for a while. I was talking earlier, you were mentioning about the side scan and everything, and I said, I've looked at it on my GoPro. There's been a couple of times I've taken my GoPro out there and dropped it down, just to see and pull it back up, and there's 20 sheepshead sitting there.
Really?
Well, they're not biting. I sit there for an hour, 2 hours just because I saw them and drop it right back down, and they're there, they're still there. Well, the tide gets right or whatever, just like anything else, man. I mean, it's like a light switch.
Yeah.
It just turns on. So that's sheepshead. I will stay longer. But outside of that, 5 minutes, I'm done with it.
Yeah, it seems like black drum and redfish, when it comes to like tidal wise, it seems like it's just where it has them. They definitely can feed better on certain tides sometimes, but a lot of times, like if you've got a piece of cut shrimp on the bottom and there's a few redfish and a few black drum there, one of them is going to eat it eventually. They're not going to pass it up like a sheepshead will or whatnot. So.
The sheepshead can probably be more picky than any of them, but for the most part, man, black drum, I mean, how reds are.
Yeah.
The blacks this year, they've been a little bit finicky. I mean, I'm catching them, but they've been biting like pinfish in a way. They're they can chew on it a little bit more so than just grab it and take off.
Yeah.
You almost kind of have to feel it and let them slowly tug on it before you set the hook. But for the most part, I mean, if you got shrimp in front, they're going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might take you a couple tries to hook them because they can be finicky like that. But, it's just, I don't know if it's a water temperature thing. I haven't ever figured out that specific with it. But, yeah, man, I mean, fresh shrimp on the bottom, 5 minutes, you're going to get a bite if they're
You are going to get a bite. Do you stick with the cut shrimp throughout the summer? Will you fish that for black drum throughout the summer?
No. I'm about done with it. The pinfish have gotten so bad. I really will fish shrimp and again, it's a water temperature thing. It's a pinfish thing, whatever. I'll fish shrimp from November, December, usually December on through. I would bet this will be the last weekend. So what is it, April 9th?
April 9th,
yeah, this will probably be it. The pinfish have gotten bad enough, and I can't stand, trying to change out bait and, getting 50 pinfish bites to catch one black drum.
Yeah, it's tough. There could be 100 black drum. None of those pinfish will just beat them to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Do you kind of stop black drum fishing at that point, or is there another bait you like to use for black drum throughout the summer?
Kind of. And I will say this: usually the black drum that I catch on oysters, there's not as many pinfish.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's also not always as many black drum. But usually the fish are nice.
Yeah.
Man, I'll be honest with you. If outside of this, once I quit fishing shrimp, I kind of quit fishing for them.
Yeah. They're hard to target without shrimp.
Yeah, outside of sheepshead fishing,
Yeah.
fishing, filler crabs and whatnot. And they bite them, but it's not like right now. Like I'm going to go out and say, yeah, I'm going to catch 8 or 10, 15 black drum today on shrimp. If I go out with filler crabs, like yeah, I might catch 4.
Yeah.
5. And it's a bycatch deal. So really, as soon as that happens, I'm kind of done with it. And then I'll pick it back up again in the fall.
Cool.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I
know. I found that too. Summertime and black drum are hard. It's always a bycatch for me. I can't go target them
yeah,
with shrimp.
And I don't think we have in this area that many black drum that stay here in the summertime.
You think they push north or push off? Or
I say that. I don't even know that it's that. It seems like the guys down south, out of this area. Once you get down to the river, I still catch them.
Yeah.
Cape Fear, and then on Oak Island, Holden Beach, Ocean Island, any of those guys down south, man, they still stay right on with them for the summertime.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's they don't have many pinfish or whatever. But outside of that, my main time for black drum is fall of the year through the spring, and then I'm done with it in the summer.
Yeah.
Just because of the pinfish.
Yeah, the pinfish will shut down bait fishing pretty quick sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Well, let's transition and talk about this for a minute because this is what seems like you'd say flounder fishing is probably your favorite to do, right?
Man, absolutely.
Are you going to get in? You're going to still target them even though we can't keep them this spring? Because personally, I still like catching them, like the thump, like working for a flounder and knowing that that was a good one and letting them eat it for a second. It's a fun fish to fish for, but it's so ingrained in our heads that like if you catch a flounder, you got to keep the flounder.
Oh yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, I don't know that I will. For the only reason of I live bait for them.
Yeah.
For the most part, you got to wait, a little while before you set the hook on them, and I hate to gut hook one and have to cut it loose. I know the commercial end of it, whatever, but I hate to do it. I hate to kill.
No, I think that's awesome.
Keep it. I realize the little fish and everything, it's going to happen, but I don't know that I will. I'll probably wait till the season happens or catch them as a bycatch because I would say 90% of the flounder I catch, they've got it.
Yeah.
Or I can't take the hook out.
Oh yeah, they'll because you like you're saying you want to wait and make sure they've eaten it well and then
and I don't care if it's a circle hook or not. I've had many of them swallow a circle hook in the ocean, so I've never really found a way outside of it.
Yeah.
So I don't. To answer your question, probably not.
Yeah. When is the season coming again?
It's August 15th to September 30th, I think.
Okay, cool.
Something like that. I'm pretty sure.
Those fish are going to get worked hard.
Oh my gosh! It's going to be insane. In the past few years, man, the flounder fishery has just been so good, especially in the ocean. Yeah, everybody's getting ready to freak out over them. I got people who are taking their vacation in August and September just for that very reason.
Yeah, to go flounder fish.
Sorry, kids. I know you're back at school, but Daddy's going flounder fishing.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. So, when you target redfish, are you doing anything different than the black drum fishing, or are you mostly just kind of fishing the same way, or maybe different areas?
Man, I'll be honest with you. I would say 95% of my red drum fishing has been a bycatch of me flounder fishing.
Really?
Yep. That's
cool.
Really how I found all of my places that I catch reds. Is flounder fishing. Don't get me wrong, I love to catch them, and it's great for clients. But it's just been more so me trying to flounder fish. I'm using, live finger mullet or artificial if I can't catch any bait or something like that. But if I was really, really actually trying to target reds, I would kind of do the same deal. When I'm flounder fishing, I'm on my trolling motor. The whole time covering ground. But for the reds, I'd kind of go to the more specific areas. docks or whatever that looks good. And I would just throw out, a couple of rods and do it that way with, live bait, cut bait, or shrimp right now. I mean, I'm still catching reds on shrimp as well. Um, but for the most part, man, I mean, I catch them flounder fishing.
Yeah.
Just covering ground, working structure. I mean, not that much different than, probably the way you would do it. But I'm a live bait guy. That's what I want to do. If I can help it, I'm going to use live bait for the reds, or cut bait. If the water's really muddy, I'll go to cut bait.
Yeah.
But if it's clear, I'm going to use live bait.
Yeah. I think that's a mistake people make a lot of times is that, you think in dirtier water. I feel like a lot of people think in dirty water they need live bait. They need something fluttering around. But I think the scent is so much more important when you get in that dirty water. Something that they can smell and track into. And in live bait, I mean, they'll still eat cut bait in clear water, but they're going to see that bait from further away than they're going to smell it in cleaner water. So,
absolutely. I mean, I've had some days where I've had some, live bait out in some muddy water for, longer than I would normally stay there, 5 or 10, 15 minutes just because it looks good, the tide's good, like there's fish here, and you not get a bite. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna cut one of these, mullet up and chunk it out and see what happens, and then throw the first rod out, go to the second rod, and wham. And that was all it was. They needed that scent.
Yeah, for sure. That's huge. Hopefully, did you have trouble last year on the bait, on the mullet and the menhaden?
I did.
It was tough in the spring, man.
It was. Not so much on the menhaden. I can usually get them pretty good, going around boat basins or whatever like that. But the finger mullet, man, I had a tough time getting them. I mean, it seemed like there was a lot, but I could only get them at low tide.
Yeah, high tide and finger mullet did not go well together.
No, it was kind of weird. I mean, I scratched my head a lot of mornings, man. I was like, it's always a little bit harder at high tide, but same deal, man. I had a tough time with it. It was weird.
I had a couple charters last year where I picked up, mid tide, maybe mid to high with my clients, and I was like, all right, let's catch bait together. This isn't going to be part of our trip time, but I didn't have time to catch bait beforehand, and I struggled a couple times in front of my clients catching mullet, and I was, I'm like, this shouldn't be this hard to catch mullet. And just
I agree with you, man. I mean, it was kind of a weird year for them. I mean, they were everywhere, but it just high tide, it was tough. And I don't really like using menhaden unless I'm in the ocean.
Yeah.
I'll use them as cut bait inside, but outside of that, man, I mean, I won't. I'm looking for finger mullet.
Yeah, they're just so much more active and last so much longer. It seems like.
Yeah.
Do you fish mud minnows at all for live bait ever, or try to stay away from them?
I will use them a little bit, maybe December, January, February if I'm just having a tough time. But outside of that, in those months, man, usually the shrimp's so productive, I don't really have to.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, the mud minnows are just too small. The pinfish still eat them alive, at least down here in my area. So I really don't. Anytime I bought them, I never had much success with them.
Yeah. The one time I have a lot of luck with them is in the wintertime for trout. That's when I really like a mud minnow. Because it's the only bait fish you can get your hands on, and the trout will eat the piss out of them. But other than that, they're kind of a crappy bait. And especially on the Carolina rig, a mud minnow, because you throw it out there and they just lay on the bottom beside the weight.
I mean, they're incredibly hardy. Yeah. I like that. But same deal. If I buy them, I'm trying to. It's been one of those deals. I went in there at low tide or something. The water was clear, and I saw trout everywhere. And they wouldn't bite. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some mud minnows on a cork, and that'll get them going.
That'll get them going. Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. When it works, so it's like, oh hell yeah, we're about to mess them up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The cork doesn't go 2 feet without. Whoop.
Yeah.
Oh man, well that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten so much more into bait fishing and live bait, cut bait, everything, and I really started throwing. I didn't start on the bait side. I started on the artificial side of things, and I thought like, oh, if you can catch them on artificial, man, bait's easy. When I first started to try to learn to bait fish with clients, like when I started guiding, it's freaking hard. Like you got to know where to be and in the right spot. You're not fishing the same stuff that you're sight fishing in. Your fishing structure is so important, and
it is, and it's weird, like you're talking about. I mean, sight fishing, you can still catch fish on artificial. But it seems like when I have been involved in some of this, you throw live bait out and they don't want it.
No, it's funny, man. It
weird.
Really is. And I've really grown to love to. I've really enjoyed learning how to bait fish better with artificial and with cut bait, and like the nuances of it. Because anybody can go put a mullet on the bottom and catch a redfish, during the tide cycle. But to consistently know where to be and how to move throughout the tide cycle, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of learning. Just like anyone can go throw a jig head around an oyster bar and catch a redfish, but it's being able to, like, throughout the tide stay on the fish. And I think there's no better way to do that than with with live bait and with cut bait. And so I think that's huge.
And it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot tide dependent. I mean, I've got same deal you do. Anybody else? I've got certain places that I wait on the tide.
Yeah.
And those fish, I mean, they can turn on a dime just for that very reason. As soon as the tide gets right, man, they'll start feeding. I mean, I think that's a lot of things that some people don't pay attention to. I mean, I know we all do, but that's a huge deal. If you have some kind of crazy day, I always capitalize on it. When I get home, like, okay, what was the tide doing? What was the wind doing? Everything when we caught these fish.
That's one thing that I've tried to push a lot on here that I don't even do well. I keep one, but a log. If you should log every single day on the water, especially if you're feeling like you have a lot of improvement to do, or like you're wanting to get a lot better at fishing from where you are. Keeping a log every single day of the good days, the bad days.
Yep.
Keep the weather, keep the barometric pressure, keep the tide, keep the water temperature, keep the air temperature, wind.
And and I'm not good at it either. Sometimes I am, and then I end up, and I have done that before. It was kind of a comparable day, and I was like, well, I'm not going to go fish because it's not going to be right. And then this was just me. I was like, man, I don't want to do that because then I'm not going to go. But yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference.
It does.
I really like to pay attention to it if I can help it. And I know you were talking about, throwing artificials and stuff. Do you fish live bait much for, your speckled trout? I mean, that's the only thing I do not use live bait for unless I've seen them, like we were talking with mud minnows. For the most part, I want to catch trout on artificial. I don't feel that same thump on, live bait. For anything else, I'm fine with live bait. Trout, man, I'm artificial. I love it. That thump just tears me up.
Oh man, I'm with you. I love throwing artificial for fish, but what I've grown to love the most is figuring out what it takes to catch that fish and doing that. Whether it's like I want to use whatever the best medium is, or the best practice is to catch the fish, or whatever they're presenting. Like maybe I'd catch a few more on a jig than a fly, but if it's a really good day to be fly fishing, the redfish are happy, they're flashing. Like I like throwing the fly. I like adapting to the scenarios and what the day gives you and doing whatever it takes. Like I have just as much fun. I always tell clients this. I'd have just as much fun going and catching like a carp on a piece of bread as a sailfish on a fly rod. I just want to figure out what it takes and do it and like figure and not master it, but just kind of like put the pieces of the puzzle together. But I will say I like to throw the artificials for trout just like you 100%. But as soon as they start, like you're saying, you see them in areas and they're not eating artificials, dude, I'm breaking out the mud minnows because it changes the game.
For whatever reason, and like I said, man, I love. I mean, if I had to pick two things, really three. I mean, flounder, sheepshead, and trout. But when it gets that time of year, the water really starts getting clear. The fish are getting lethargic, and I come into a big school of trout that's got big fish in it, and they're not biting me. It tears my nerves up, man. I've got to get some mud minnows something. I
know, man. I'm gonna start keeping mud minnow traps and like blue crabs in my boat, so I can just go catch them that day. Because I can't tell how many times too I've like seen them, but like, all right, next time I've got the opportunity, I'm bringing mud minnows, and it'll be like a week and a half later, and I'll go in there and they're gone, And so it's like this in the winter time, and we're getting out of that. If you see trout now, they'll probably eat a jig. Maybe not that time. Maybe you spooked them, but if you go back in there the next day at the same tide, you can get them to eat a jig. But
that's what I've been catching them on. Just fishing jigs. Honestly, I've been fishing just like I would in the fall. Current, grass. I've gotten out of the boat basins and places like that. I'm fishing normal fall time structure close to the inlets or whatever.
They're just like the bass. They transition the same way. So like, they go. Their spring patterns are the same as their fall patterns. It's just in reverse. They're just cycling in and out of these patterns. So
that's the deal. And I mean, I'm not doing anything different than I would have been doing in November. It's taken a while, but I mean, they're in those places. And right now, the waterway's just been flooded with glass minnows. At least it was today and yesterday. Follow that. If you see that in a creek, there's fish there.
They're not. There's
going to be
some of those glass minnows. Be throwing epoxy jigs for speckled trout.
No doubt.
Well, cool, man. Well, is there anything else? We're at an hour. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Any tips?
Yeah, I do, man. I kind of, it's easy to get sidetracked when you start talking. Man, I wanted to get back to the sheepshead thing real quick. This was something that, and I hope some people get to this point where they hear this, man. And I wish I brought it up earlier, but the main thing I have found with sheepshead fishing that makes all the difference in the world, um, when you're fishing, especially straight up and down, when you're fishing a dock, it's a little bit hard. But if you're fishing straight up and down, I never put my bait on the bottom. I'll let it go to the bottom, and then I will reel my slack up to where my rod tip is at the water level, and it's tight. And I'll pick up on it about 2 inches. And the whole time I'm slowly just doing this right here. Move it up, move it down, just real slow. I mean, and it's crucial to feeling that bite when you're picking it up and moving it. If it stops, hammer it.
Yeah.
Set the hook. That kind of eliminates that sheepshead bite. That very little light tick that they do. The old timers will tell you if you feel them bite, they're gone.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that. But I've found if you keep your line moving very slowly, but enough where you can feel it, that you're actually moving your rod, it'll stop. It'll feel like you're hung up, or it'll just totally stop. Set the hook. That fish has got that bait, and you're just not going to feel it. And then you keep moving, and it'll let go of it. And then the other thing, especially when the sheepshead go into like a feeding blitz, if you will, and they'll still do it outside of that. Watch your line. When you're sitting there slowly moving it up and down, or just sitting there watch it might move a half inch, and that's that fish. They'll pick it up and swim with it, and you will never feel it.
Yeah, man, that's the craziest thing about it.
It's amazing. You got to pay attention to your line and keep it moving. Don't sit there and wham. Don't amberjack jig it, but just slowly move it, man. I mean, that is crucial.
When you say you're slowly lifting up and down, how far are you transitioning from like up to down? A foot. Okay, cool.
A foot. Yep.
And you're always keeping it about 2 inches off the bottom, like that's the lowest you're going, and then you're coming about.
Yep. So in other words,
inches off and then back down.
Yep. When I drop my rod tip, when I reel my slack up, I want my rod tip out the water.
Okay.
And then I'm going to pick up just where I would comfortably fish. Like this.
Yeah.
And so that's 2-3 inches, whatever. So at that point, your weight's off the bottom, but your crab's still right there at it. I'm going to pick up a foot, maybe 18 inches. But I'm going to constantly keep it moving. If I don't get a bite in, a minute, 2 minutes, I'm going to just reel it up and check it.
Sweet.
That's one thing of the sheepshead. You check your bait. You're not going to spook them by reeling it in a bunch or doing nothing like that. They really don't spook that easy for whatever reason, especially on bridges. But in my experience, at least for me, if I start seeing them, at high tide, they start coming up to the surface. On bridges, if I start seeing them, I'm done.
Yeah.
They don't bite for me. I have had okay days like that. For the most part, if you can see them, hang it up. Go do something else. It's not always the case. I'd try it, but.
And that seems like the time where you'd want to be like, oh, I'm seeing them here. I know they're here. I'm going to keep fishing. But I'm with you. That's always tough when you see them floating up on the piling.
Yeah. But that's the two main things, man, that really will help people, figure out how to do this is keep your line moving and watch it. That will really, it just really, really eliminates that very light bite that you might not even feel. And you're still going to miss them 100%. You're still going to miss fish, but that picking it up like that, and it'll take you a couple tries of feeling it, and then you lose your bait, and you're like, okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
But it is just, over the years, it's really helped my, catch ratio, versus missing fish,
Definitely.
By moving it. I mean, it's amazing how they can take it off without you even feeling them bite, but, moving it and watch your line is the best advice I can give anybody.
Yeah, like you said, man, I just want to touch on that one more time. Watching the line is crazy because I can't tell you how many times I've been doing it, and the line just starts moving out to the right, and you feel nothing on your rod tip.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
It's crazy.
And they're swimming away with
absolutely
it.
Crazy.
It's like they know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to get away with the bait and give you no alerts. So, cool.
It's crazy, man. I mean, they can move. I've had some not paying attention. I mean, they've got it, foot and a half away, and I never felt it move. And as soon as I see that, I mean, I break their jaw, but set the hook into them. It is crazy, and once you get into it, like you said, man, if you didn't know, you would never feel it. I mean, it's insane.
You've caught a lot more sheepshead than me. This is my last question. I know this has had to happen to you because it's happened to me. When the hook will just be wedged in between their teeth. Have you caught many like that, where it's not even in them, but it's like stuck in the gap in their teeth?
No,
you haven't caught them like that.
Have you actually caught one?
I've caught 2 or 3 like that, where the hook is just jammed between their white teeth. Not even.
No way. Yeah. No, I haven't, man. That's crazy.
My other sheepshead claim to fame is in Louisiana, which in Louisiana, sheepshead aren't sheepshead. They act very different. But I've caught
I
them
got
on.
some buddies that catch them on popping corks and jigs and
Oh,
stuff.
dude, we've caught them on chatterbaits down there. Retrieving a
crazy.
chatterbait and you get bit and it ends up being a big 10-pound sheepshead. So it's very different than here. So if you're from Louisiana, this podcast will definitely still help you on structure, but also might as well just go catch them on chatterbaits. Maybe even topwater plugs.
Sign me up. That's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. If guys want to reach out to you and book a trip and fish with you for sheepshead or anything else, how can they get a hold of you?
You can, get on my Instagram. It's just Luke Moser, and then, you would see Coastline Charters, LLC up under that. Facebook, same deal, Coastline Charters, LLC. I think my email, telephone number, any of that stuff's on there as well.
Cool.
I've got a website. It seems like everybody goes to Facebook and Instagram now.
Yeah.
But that's it. But yeah, Coastline Charters, LLC, it's here, Wrightsville Beach, Carolina Beach, the Cape Fear River area. That's the easiest place to get me.
And the Luke Moser, you guys, if you're listening and not watching, because it's been on the bottom of the screen, but it's LUKEMOSER at Luke Moser on Instagram, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And then you'd see the Coastline Charters and everything right up under it, just to know you're in the right area.
Sweet.
But
Sweet.
Facebook the same way.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to close the show off. And
you
guys, we are going to me and Luke are going to try to get out and go jack up some sheepshead here in the next couple of days, maybe the next week or two, and do a little video for y'all. So we've talked about it. Now y'all can see Luke in action, crushing the sheepshead. And we're going to try to put that together for you. No promises. We both are busy dudes, but we're going to try our best to get it together and go put something together for y'all. But I'm going to switch back over to my camera here for those of y'all that are watching. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of Eastern Current. We're going to keep bringing y'all 2 episodes a week. If you're lucky, maybe 3 episodes a week sometimes. I'm going to try to stay really, really strict on my uploading schedule. I'm backloading a lot of episodes right now so that we can stay ahead and never get behind. But Luke, man, that was an awesome episode. Definitely, you guys go try sheepshead fishing. It is a great fish to fish for here in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia. They're all up and down the coast, from Florida all the way up to north of. I mean, they catch them all the way up in New York and New Jersey. So every state, I would say, if you fish the way we've talked about right now, you will catch sheepshead. So give it a shot. It's a great fish to fish for. And the other cool thing is, if you don't have a boat, go walk out on some of these bridges, on some of these public docks, and you can do the same thing from foot. So don't be nervous that, I can't sheepshead fish because I don't have a boat, I don't have a kayak. This is a great fish to target on foot, especially starting now through the next couple months as these fish are getting on the structure inshore really well. So, but as always, this is Eastern Current, and I'm Judson Brock. That was Luke, and we will see y'all in the next episode. Later.